Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Revenue Optimists. We're a space where revenue operations folks and go-to-market leaders can learn from one another in order to grow their businesses. My name is Dave Nelson, and with me today, I'm very fortunate to have Rosalyn Santa Elena with me, who's an absolute expert in revenue operations. She's been the VP of RevOps at several businesses and now actually running her own business at the Revenue Collective. So Rosalyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Fantastic. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I've been in sort of the RevOps space as a practitioner for a number of years. I hate to date myself, but it's probably been it's been a little over 20 years now that I've been leading teams, different sizes of organizations, but RevOps is my passion. And so, as you mentioned recently, went out on my own to really try to bring RevOps to more businesses and to more professionals.
That's fantastic. And I know you're very well known. In fact, you won the LinkedIn Thought Leader Series for RevOps last year. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
I know you have a very strong or an alternative approach to who should be owning kind of comp plans between sales teams and revenue operations. Do you mind telling us
Yeah.
your philosophy and how you go about approaching that and any tips and tricks?
Yeah. So selfishly, I think revenue operations, they are, should be closest to the business. They understand the day to day. They're close to the people, right? They're close to the data. And they can also take that holistic view, right, across kind of the funnel, right? They really can understand I think maybe a good way to put it is they really have the customer in mind more so than, hey, marketing objectives or sales objectives or post sales objectives. And so they can kind of take that holistic view and be sort of that neutral party, but equipped with the right information to be able to help lead or at least guide comp planning. In my prior roles, I've always led comp planning. And I think I shared with you that, I started out in compensation. That's kind of how my journey began like 22 years ago in operations and kind of broadened into, other areas of ops. So sales comp is really near and dear to my heart. And I just think that it's such a powerful tool for the organization. I don't know if there is a more powerful tool to help drive the go-to-market objectives and strategy,
Interesting. Okay.
right? But it has to be done right. And as you and I both, as you're smiling, I know, that there's so many ways for it to go wrong, right? And there's so many reasons why it goes wrong. But I think with RevOps, playing a part or leading the discussions, and it doesn't mean that they're the subject matter expert in everything, right? Because they're going to be meeting with the sales leaders and meeting with marketing, with finance, with legal, and even with HR, right? To bring together what a good comp structure looks like that makes sense from a financial perspective for the organization, but also from a go-to-market perspective from the revenue organization.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're going through that process, what do you think are the fundamentals of a good comp plan? And what does that typically look like? And not talking individual dollars, but percentages or how it's approached, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think definitely, when you think about designing the comp structure, you have to align on the philosophy, right? What is your compensation philosophy? Because there's going to be a philosophy at the corporate level, right, from an HR perspective, but then there's also a philosophy around the sales team and the go-to-market team, right? What is it that, how do we want to pay, right? We talk about like the bell curves and things like that. And there's companies that I work for where we want everybody to hit quota, but not that many above quota, right? Or we want a certain percentage to be under plan. And so you model a lot of this out. But at the core of it is really, when you think about your comp structure, you want to pay for performance. We talk about that a lot, but what does that really mean? That means you want to target and compensate individuals on what they can actually impact, right? And what you want to hold them accountable for. And so what is it that, if I'm an account executive, what is it that you want me to go do? Like what is that top thing? And a lot of times it's go acquire net new logos, net new revenue, right? ARR. But whatever those key things are that, one, you want me to be accountable for, but two, you want me to go do, right? Because this is the behavior that you want to incent. And then you want to pay and reward the person for achieving those, for going and doing the right things. But you also want to design the plan to be around something that you can actually measure, accurately and timely, right? Because timing is so important with compensation. The closer you can, and we all know this around, the closer you can pay, to the actual act of, the earning and paying at the same time, as close as possible is really important. But keep it simple. I think that's the biggest mistake that people make is they overcomplicate the compensation structure. They try to put everything into the comp plan. It's like, oh, I want them to, have CRM hygiene. I want them to keep their forecast updated. And they try to put those into the comp structure where they don't belong there.
Interesting. Okay. And so what's maybe an example of one of the best comp plans that you've seen? And again, not dollars, but just on what's incented and what's paid on and when it's paid and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So compensation to me is, like, again, very simple. For each role, you need to have accountability, right? Like, what is the top 1 or 2 things, even 3 things that you want that role to go focus on, right? And keep it super simple. It's, like in the A example, maybe it's, I want them to go after net new logos. I want them to acquire new ARR, and that's it. And keep it super simple, and then pay as quickly as possible, which is, again, goes back to make sure you have the data to be able to pay accurately and timely. And typically it's monthly, right? We typically pay sales monthly, but keep it simple, keep it to a couple of variables. Don't try to do too much with the plan, because things like CRM hygiene or forecast accuracy and things like that, that's base pay, right? Doing the things that you're supposed to do, training, learning the material, understanding the mess, that's base pay, right? To me, and the rest of it is variable. So this is the part that you want folks to be incented to go out and do and hit targets and then get paid well, right? Make sure that you're paying. I mean, the worst thing you can do is put out a comp plan and then not pay according to, the structure.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I think the one area we've seen from customers where they end up not paying is usually because of a commission split or a conflict. Have you run into that at all in your career?
Yeah. So I think this is another maybe best practices around when you structure your comp plans, right? Because there's the individual document around quotas and rates and all of that. But there's also the governing kind of terms and conditions, right? The T's and C's across all of the comp structure, and having really clear rules of engagement is really important, right? Because not everyone in your organization has to be compensated on every single deal, right? You want to reward and incent the folks that are actually going to, again, have the biggest impact, right? They are accountable, they're responsible, and they're the ones who are going to do the work to hit. And so make sure that if you have splits, if you have, partnerships, channel, any kind of overlay, making sure that that's really clear in terms of rules of engagement, who does what and how do they get paid, and always align pay to quota. Right? Attainment to quota. This is one of the things that is very fundamental, is whenever there's a dispute around getting paid as for something, always going back to the quota, right? Was it in your quota? How was the quota set? Was it part of your territory? Is it part of your book of business? And having that, always kind of fundamentally going back to that. But the more you can be transparent and be upfront around your policy, rules of engagement, how are splits handled? Because inevitably there will be splits, but how are those handled? And always follow that same process is really important.
Smart. Yeah, very smart. Now I know we're getting a little bit shorter on time, but I have a whole bunch more I'd love to ask.
Yeah.
There's just you're such a wealth of knowledge. Maybe sticking with comp for revenue operations folks, how have you seen that role be most effectively rewarded? Is it just base? Are there bonuses? Is it tied to anything? Is it revenue?
Yeah. So from a RevOps leadership perspective, I personally, and I think we're seeing a lot more leaders kind of step into this type of structure, is to be compensated based on your revenue number, right? So I have
revenue.
So I have a variable that's tied to my CRO's number, right? Because at the end of the day, everything that I should be doing, again, drive more revenue faster, right? So if the company is successful, if the CRO, if he or she is successful in hitting their number, then I feel that I've done my job, right? I've been successful in helping them. For manager level and maybe even director level and below, what I've seen is more of a split. I think we've seeing more tied to revenue, just like we're seeing more marketing tied to revenue, having some of those goals as well. I think the ops team, a lot of times they're more bonus based, right? And so the higher level or more senior the person, the more likely they're going to have like a variable cut from their, they're going to have OTE, right? Basically have base and variable. And then more of the analyst kind of individual contributor level, a lot of times you'll see them tied to the company plan if there's a company bonus. So meaning bonus on top of base, right? 100% plus. And then the bonus piece, whether it's carved out of your OTE or it's on top of, typically is based upon individual goals. Right. So you're setting KPIs or MBOs, and those can be more project based, more things that, implement this, create that, and things that are, again, still tied back to moving revenue faster and driving efficiencies and better outcomes, but more under their control, kind of going back to the what can I actually impact piece of it, right? And tying their comp as well to that. But yeah, mostly we're seeing of teams that I've had on my under my team have been tied to bonuses around goals. Yeah, more MBO based, but for the leadership, again, tied to revenue is the best, because you want to be that partner.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Well, Rosalyn, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned a ton, and hopefully it'll be a big help to the community. For those of you listening, if you're looking for more tips on RevOps or advice, you can stay tuned. We'll be posting a lot of this information both on LinkedIn and our Revenue Optimists page on our website. And you can go check out both the Revenue Collective.
Oh, it's RevOps Collective.
The RevOps Collective.
Yeah.
And the Revenue Engine podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rosalyn.
Thank you for having me.